In this video, we're going to be discussing private goods and club goods. Now, private goods are basically what we've been talking about for the entire semester. They're goods that are rival and excludable. Because they're rival, that means there's only so much to go around. Okay, we can't all have as much of these goods as we want, so they need to be allocated well, and we, as economists, we want them to be allocated to the people who value them the most. The goods being excludable means that it's easy for sellers to do that. It's easy for sellers to make sure that they only sell their goods to people who are willing to pay the highest price for them. Okay, and so private goods do a good job of providing, markets do a good job of providing private goods to consumers. Okay, the incentives are all aligned quite well. Now, they're not going to necessarily do a perfect job. Okay, we've talked about in multiple lectures, if you tax a market that's selling a private good, that's going to create a deadweight loss. Or if you subsidize a market that's producing a private good, that will also create a deadweight loss. Price controls can screw up markets for private goods. If you have a monopoly that could be selling a private good, but that monopoly has an incentive to hold its prices above marginal cost, and that can result in a deadweight loss as well. And if there are externalities in the market for a private good, that can also cause deadweight losses. Too much or too few units can be produced. Okay, so there are exceptions. Private goods aren't perfectly provided by the free market, but the market does a pretty good job of providing them. So we're not going to dwell on private goods for this lecture. That brings us to club goods. And it turns out that club goods are actually very similar to monopoly. Okay, the analysis of club good is very similar to the analysis for monopoly. And let's go through that. Club goods, they might have a high fixed cost, but they've got very low or zero marginal cost, which means once this good is produced, you could give it away for free on each additional unit, more or less. It's not going to cost the firm anymore if they're selling 1 million units versus if they're selling 1 unit. Okay. Now, once a club good has been produced, because the marginal cost is zero, or because it's so low, the best outcome would be if consumers got it for free. Okay, as long as you can cover those fixed costs. Once those costs have been covered, everybody should be able to get it, as cheaply as possible. But because the producer of the club good has the ability to restrict access to it, has the ability to exclude people from consuming it, they can charge a markup on the good above their marginal cost, and they can earn economic profits as a result. Okay, now club goods are going to result in some deadweight loss, but it's important to remember that even though they generate a deadweight loss, they still can generate large gains from trade, and the market is still going to produce a lot of these types of goods. So let's go through the graph of club goods. We've got, this is the graph in front of you is what we used for monopoly, okay, where you have, let's see, there's my cursor. You've got a downward sloping marginal cost curve, a downward sloping demand curve, downward sloping marginal revenue curve, and then marginal cost is some positive number here, right? Remember that the firm wants to set its output where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. That gives you the monopolist's price, okay? Well, with a club good, it's the same basic analysis. The only thing that's going to change is that marginal cost curve, instead of being up here at a relatively high number, marginal cost is going to be zero, or again, very close to zero. Okay, how does that change things? Well, all that means is that marginal cost equals marginal revenue when marginal revenue is equal to zero. So we get a different level of output. It's a little bit more than it was when marginal costs were higher. And we're going to get wherever that profit maximizing level of output is, that sets the price. Okay, and you'll notice that that price is a little lower than it was when the marginal costs were higher. But otherwise, you basically have a monopoly, right? Where the area of this triangle here is giving you the consumer surplus. The area of this rectangle there gives you the producer surplus. And this triangle is the deadweight loss. The efficient outcome would be to set the price at zero, or at least set it to just being the average fixed cost per unit, and then allow everybody to purchase it who wants to. If you were to do that, there would be no deadweight loss, but all of the gains from trade would go to the consumers, just like in a monopoly. The firm who's producing this club good doesn't want that outcome, and so their incentive is hold that price up above their marginal cost of zero and maximize their monopoly profits. But again, club goods, we're not going to worry about them too much because they're not catastrophic, right? A club good, cable television is a club good. Streaming video is a club good. Wi-Fi is a club good. And if you look around you at the world, you see plenty of those goods actually being provided. Yes, the firms that provide them are probably charging us a markup above marginal cost, but they're still generating a lot of surplus, both for themselves and for consumers. So we're not going to worry about that type of good for this lecture. We're going to focus on common resources and public goods, which have much bigger problems associated with them. So in the next lecture video, we're going to discuss public goods.